The courtroom fell silent the moment Dwayne Johnson took the stand. Clad in an unmistakable orange prison jumpsuit, the man once celebrated as a global icon of strength and integrity now sat under the unforgiving lights of a federal court in Washington, D.C. His eyes, unwavering and cold, locked with someone seated just 20 feet away, Kevin Hart. The tension in the air was unlike anything anyone had experienced in a courtroom before. Journalists, legal experts, and Hollywood insiders all filled the gallery, their notebooks forgotten in their laps. Kevin Hart, seated stiffly beside his high-profile defense attorney, adjusted his collar and attempted to offer a neutral expression. But the twitch at the corner of his eye betrayed something else entirely. It was never supposed to come to this. For over a decade, Dwayne and Kevin had been the definition of on-screen chemistry. Their interviews were viral gold, their movies, box office hits. Fans adored their brotherhood. But beneath the surface of comedic banter and staged hugs, a dark truth had been fermenting. And now, with millions watching and cameras forbidden but imaginations ignited, that truth was finally clawing its way into daylight. "I want to make something very clear," Dwayne began, his voice deep and solemn, echoing through the hushed room. "This is not about revenge. This is about release." He inhaled sharply. "For years I was manipulated. For years I stayed quiet. Because the person doing the manipulation was someone the world trusted to make them laugh. But I'm here now, and I won't let fear silence me anymore." The judge nodded gravely, giving him the floor. Dwayne's testimony started in 2014, the year their friendship reached its peak. It was also the year, according to Dwayne, when everything began to unravel behind closed doors. "I was invited to Kevin's private birthday party. Small crowd, celebrities. Seemed normal," Dwayne explained. "But things changed when I was led into the second floor of his mansion. That's when I saw the cameras." The courtroom stirred. "Not paparazzi," Dwayne clarified. "Security cameras, dozens of them, in places they didn't belong." He paused, letting the room digest his words. He went on to describe how Kevin had built an intricate network of private recordings. Bedrooms, bathrooms, lounges. What initially seemed like over-the-top security turned out to be something far more sinister. A system designed to collect compromising footage of anyone who entered Kevin's private events. "He told me it was for protection," Dwayne recalled. "He said the footage would be destroyed every week. But I later discovered that some of those tapes were being archived, categorized even." "How did you find out?" the prosecutor asked. Dwayne's expression hardened. "Because one day I got an email," he continued, "an anonymous email sent to him in 2017. No message, just a video clip, grainy but unmistakable. It showed Dwayne himself, drunk, half-conscious, saying things he didn't remember ever saying. That was the first time I understood the extent of Kevin's control." He tried to confront Kevin. The meeting took place at a luxury hotel in Beverly Hills. I asked him straight, "What are you doing with those videos?" Kevin, according to Dwayne, didn't deny anything. Instead, he smiled. He said, "Don't worry, brother, I protect my own." "But from what?" Dwayne had asked. The answer never came. From that day forward, things shifted. Dwayne noticed strange coincidences, scripts he had been attached to suddenly dropping him. Directors he was close to started ignoring his calls. Rumors circulated online. Dwayne was difficult. Dwayne was unstable. Dwayne was aggressive. "I thought I was losing my mind," he said, "but then I realized I wasn't paranoid. I was being isolated." A long pause followed. Dwayne swallowed, visibly holding something back. Then he said it. "My daughter was next." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. "I received another video," he said, his voice breaking for the first time. "This one showed her, at Kevin's house. She was there with her friends, invited for a youth mentorship brunch. But the footage—" He couldn't finish the sentence. The judge allowed a short recess. But the damage was done. Kevin sat frozen, jaw clenched. The crowd murmured in disbelief. And Dwayne, once Hollywood's strongest man, sat down, exhausted but resolute. The truth had only just begun to surface. When the court reconvened, the air was noticeably different. The whispers had stopped. The tension that lingered before now hardened into something heavier. Suspicion, dread, and a quiet curiosity that bordered on obsession. Dwayne Johnson rose again, slower this time. The man who had once stood atop the entertainment world looked like a warrior walking through wreckage. As he adjusted the mic, his hands were steady, not from peace, but from purpose. "I said earlier that I got fragments," he continued, "emails, texts. But eventually, someone came forward." He referred to a man named Marcus Bell, a former assistant to Kevin Hart. Marcus had worked in Hart's production company for 6 years, mostly in silence, mostly in fear. But he had reached out to Dwayne in 2021, weeks after Kevin's Netflix special was mysteriously pulled from rotation with no official reason. "Marcus told me everything," Dwayne said. A wave of murmurs swept through the courtroom again. "He said Kevin kept a vault," Dwayne continued, "not digital, physical, a locked room in one of his homes in Calabasas. Inside, there were dozens of hard drives, each labeled by name, famous names. Some I won't mention here. Marcus had allegedly stolen one of the drives before quitting the job under the pretense of a family emergency. That drive, Dwayne claimed, contained multiple video files and audio recordings. Blackmail material. Some included compromising footage of politicians, music producers, A-list actors. And one folder was named DWJ. It wasn't just the footage, Dwayne said, jaw clenched. There were notes, timelines of my schedule, details about my family's routines, things only someone close would know. At this point, the judge allowed the prosecution to submit a series of screenshots and metadata analyses conducted by an FBI forensics team. The data confirmed that a drive had indeed been extracted from Kevin Hart's private server. The files matched with Dwayne's claims, timestamps, facial recognition, geolocation tags. Kevin's lawyer immediately objected, claiming chain of custody violations, but the damage was done. The seed of credibility had been planted. Then came the voice recordings. Dwayne paused before giving consent to play them. The courtroom speakers crackled, and then came the unmistakable voice of Kevin Hart. The tone wasn't comedic, it was cold, calculating. "You think they'll choose you over me," the voice said. "You think your reputation's untouchable. I made you funny, Dwayne. Don't forget that." A collective breath was sucked from the room. Kevin's face turned pale. The second clip was shorter, but more chilling. "Push me, and your daughter's going to be in the spotlight in ways you can't undo." Kevin's attorney stood up, furious. "Your Honor, we object to the authenticity of these clips. This is character assassination without technical proof of origin." The judge raised a hand. "We'll verify in chambers. For now, the jury will disregard the tone, not the content." But no one in that room could unhear what they'd just heard. Dwayne's expression was unreadable. He continued, "That was the moment I realized this wasn't personal. It was systemic." He described how Kevin had allegedly partnered with a handful of entertainment executives who shared his obsession with leverage. Invitations to exclusive events often included NDAs and no-phone policies. But hidden cameras and pre-arranged intoxication meant few attendees remembered what happened, and even fewer were willing to talk. "That's how they built it," Dwayne said. "Fear, silence, shame." The gallery was quiet. Some jurors looked visibly shaken. Then came the part no one expected. Dwayne presented a wire transfer, $750,000 wired from his personal account in 2019 to a shell company linked to a real estate venture backed by Hart's cousin. The payment was disguised as an equity stake, but included a non-disclosure clause requiring Dwayne's silence on any professional or private dispute involving the Hart family. "I paid that money so my daughter could go to college without waking up to tabloids destroying her name." There were audible gasps. Even Kevin lowered his head. But Dwayne wasn't done. He handed the prosecutor a sealed envelope. Inside were 3 handwritten letters, one from Marcus Bell, another from a woman identified only as LS, and the last from Dwayne's own security consultant detailing months of intercepted threats from anonymous numbers linked to burner phones. Each letter told a piece of the puzzle: manipulation, control, and psychological warfare. Dwayne ended the day's testimony with a single sentence: "I don't want revenge. I want my family to be free." The judge adjourned court for the day. As cameras clicked outside and reporters scrambled to summarize the storm inside, one truth became unshakable. This wasn't just about Kevin Hart anymore. This was about an empire built on secrets and a man who decided to burn it down. And tomorrow, it would only get dark. The next morning, the line outside the federal courthouse stretched down the block. Inside, every seat in the gallery was filled. Reporters, lawyers, curious spectators, and entertainment insiders. Some whispered that the Kevin Hart trial was shaping up to be Hollywood's most devastating exposé. But most were here for one reason. Dwayne Johnson was expected to take the stand again. And he did. This time, he brought the storm with him. "I want to tell you about the moment I realized I was never his friend," Dwayne began. "Not really." He recounted an event in 2020, one that had never been made public. At the time, Dwayne was preparing to launch a mental health foundation in honor of his late father. The press was scheduled, the endorsements lined up, but 2 days before the announcement, the entire campaign was pulled, cancelled without warning. "I got a call," Dwayne said, "from someone I didn't know. They said I needed to think twice before publicly playing the hero. Said if I moved forward, certain footage from a Vegas party would find its way to the Daily Mail." The courtroom stirred. Dwayne paused, letting it sink in. "I didn't even remember the party," he continued, "but then I got a clip. The video was grainy, late-night setting. Dwayne was slurring, barely able to stand, surrounded by people he didn't recognize. And Kevin's voice could be heard off-camera, laughing, directing people into the frame. It was humiliating," Dwayne said, "but what broke me was realizing this wasn't an accident. It was architecture." The prosecution presented metadata confirming the video was recorded in 2018 at a private event hosted by Hart's management team. NDAs, guest lists, and catering logs all tied back to a shell company connected to Kevin's digital brand division. Then came the bombshell. Dwayne revealed that in late 2021, he had attempted to go to law enforcement. Quietly, without fanfare. But within 48 hours of his inquiry, his daughter's phone was hacked. Personal photos leaked. Her Instagram locked out. Her college campus received anonymous calls hinting at scandal. "You don't go after a man's child," Dwayne said, gripping the witness stand. "That's not just power. That's war." The judge instructed the jury to remain impartial, but it was obvious. The story was becoming harder to dismiss. Kevin's legal team fired back in full force. Benjamin Reese, Hart's lead attorney, argued that Johnson's testimony was emotionally charged but lacked hard proof. "We have no evidence Mr. Hart sent those videos, no proof he orchestrated harassment. The transfer of money, speculative, the recordings, questionable origin. Ladies and gentlemen, don't let theatre replace truth." But the prosecution had one more play. They called Marcus Bell to the stand. Marcus walked in, a quiet middle-aged man with sunken eyes and a guarded posture. The courtroom was silent. He testified under oath that he had personally seen Kevin review footage of celebrities from hidden cameras, that he had delivered hard drives to unnamed locations, that he had destroyed evidence more than once, at Kevin's direct request. "Why didn't you speak out earlier?" the prosecutor asked. Marcus looked at Dwayne before answering. "Because I didn't think anyone would believe me, and because I was afraid I'd end up like the others." "Others?" Marcus nodded. "A few people who tried to walk away ended up in scandals. DUIs, arrests, bankruptcies, careers collapsed overnight. I thought it was coincidence. Now, I'm not so sure." The courtroom buzzed again. Marcus then identified emails, text messages, and even footage that he had kept hidden. Copies he secretly stored on an encrypted USB drive. One of those messages, sent from Kevin's burner number, read, "Control the story, or the story controls you." The judge recessed for the day to verify the integrity of the drive. Outside, the media exploded. Hashtags like #sign Kevin Hart files and #sign Dwayne vs. Hollywood began trending. Fan bases split down the middle. Industry veterans issued carefully worded statements. Some defended Kevin, others remained suspiciously silent. That night, Dwayne posted a message through his lawyer. It read, "I'm not afraid anymore." The next day would determine everything. By the time court resumed for day 4, the courthouse resembled a fortress. Barricades lined the street, security was doubled, media vans clustered like vultures, their antennas reaching skyward. Inside, the air buzzed not just with anticipation, but with the weight of reckoning. Dwayne Johnson, back on the stand, was no longer just a celebrity under scrutiny. He was now something else entirely, the key that could unlock a vault of secrets Hollywood never intended to open. "Yesterday," Dwayne began slowly, "you heard from Marcus Bell. Today you're going to see what I saw." With the judge's permission, the prosecution introduced a set of files recovered from Marcus's encrypted USB drive. The files had been authenticated by digital forensic experts and matched several entries in Kevin Hart's internal calendar, retrieved via subpoena. The screen flickered on. What followed was nearly 5 minutes of silent footage. Various A-list celebrities at private gatherings, clearly unaware they were being filmed. Most of the recordings were mundane: drunken dancing, offhand comments, innocent flirtations. But one clip showed Kevin in conversation with an unknown executive, pointing toward a screen and saying, "This is the leverage portfolio. One day, we'll need it." Dwayne didn't flinch. Kevin, however, visibly shifted in his seat. The defense immediately objected. "There's no definitive proof Mr. Hart said those words," Reese argued. But the damage had already landed. Then came the direct line to Dwayne's family. The prosecution presented screenshots of messages sent to Dwayne's daughter's phone, coded language, phrases like "father's shadow is long" and "the price of silence is peace." Each message was sent from different burner numbers, with timestamps that lined up exactly with key dates in Dwayne's legal consultation timeline. The jury watched as FBI metadata confirmed those messages originated from a private server once used by Hart's digital marketing agency. "Why would Kevin do this?" the prosecutor asked. Dwayne didn't hesitate. "Control. He believed friendship was a currency, and if you refused to pay, he'd bankrupt you." At that moment, the courtroom doors opened. A surprise witness had arrived. It was Lisa Sinclair, once Kevin Hart's executive assistant. Her name had never come up publicly. She had left Hart's team in 2022 under mysterious circumstances, rumored to have taken a buyout and disappeared from the public eye. Now she stepped into the courtroom with a neutral grey suit, her expression unreadable. Under oath, she confirmed Marcus Bell's testimony and then added her own. "I managed Kevin's travel, his bookings, his calls. I also handled the scheduling of events with, let's say, unique protocols." She explained how guests were selected for private events, how their phones were disabled using localized signal jammers, and how the interior staff were rotated weekly to prevent loyalty formation. But the most disturbing part came when she revealed the compliance files. Kevin had a folder, digital and physical, on nearly every person he invited more than once. Notes, habits, weaknesses. He called it insurance. Lisa produced one more envelope, delivered to her anonymously after she left Hart's employment. Inside was a printed photo. Dwayne's daughter exiting her school, circled in red ink with the words, "Remind him." Gasps, audible sobbing. The judge called for immediate recess. Kevin sat unmoving. Dwayne sat breathing heavy. Outside, chaos erupted. Headlines flooded the internet. Major sponsors began dropping Hart's name from upcoming events. Studio partners announced internal investigations. Celebrities who had once joked alongside Kevin issued cryptic tweets or disappeared entirely. And for Dwayne, the moment was bittersweet. Back at the courthouse, he met privately with his attorney Olivia, who whispered, "They're ready to move forward with charges." "Against him?" Dwayne asked. "Against him," she nodded, "and against the others." The others had always been the shadow figures, executives, agents, legal enablers, who operated behind Kevin's rise. If Hart fell, the web would unravel, and for the first time, it looked like someone had grabbed a loose thread. That night, federal agents raided a Los Angeles property tied to Kevin's media holding company. What they found would stun even Dwayne Johnson. But that truth would have to wait for Day 5. Day 5 was unlike anything the courtroom had seen before. Federal agents had worked through the night, collecting boxes of hard drives, documents, encrypted phones, and handwritten ledgers from the Los Angeles property tied to Kevin Hart's media company. Now all eyes were on the courtroom as the final pieces were laid out. Dwayne Johnson sat in the witness chair one last time, but this time he wasn't just giving testimony. He was witnessing the collapse of something far bigger than himself. The prosecution opened the session with what they called the ledger, It was a thick, leather-bound book recovered from Kevin's private office. In it were names, hundreds of them, celebrities, producers, athletes, influencers. Next to each name were numbers, symbols, and color codes. Olivia Harper, Dwayne's attorney, explained this was not a journal. It was a record of control. She pointed to Dwayne's entry. Code red, leverage, high, asset used, daughter Vegas. 2018. Gasp. Next to that, an amount, $750,000. And one more word, compliant. But the most damning part, cross-references, notes that matched with time-stamped digital footage recovered by the FBI. They showed one such clip in court, a hotel suite, a hidden angle, Kevin Hart speaking to two unknown men. If Dwayne goes off script, we remind him, I don't want the rock. I want the puppet. The room was stunned. The judge ordered an immediate review for criminal conspiracy. Kevin Hart, seated beside his attorney, went pale. He whispered something to his legal team. One of them shook their head. The defense had no rebuttal. Dwayne took a deep breath. This was never about destroying a man, he said. This was about breaking a cycle. He turned toward the jury. I spent years thinking silence was strength, that protecting my family meant shutting up and enduring whatever they threw at me. But silence doesn't protect, it imprisons. And I'm done being a prisoner. He stood up, no longer under oath. Then something unexpected happened. Kevin Hart stood too, not to testify, not to object, just to look at Dwayne. For a moment, the entire courtroom watched as two men who had once shared stages, laughter, and success stood as enemies in the same storm. Kevin sat back down, and the verdict began. The jury found that there was enough credible evidence to indict Kevin Hart on charges of conspiracy, intimidation, extortion, and obstruction of justice. Additional indictments were recommended for 3 executives, 2 handlers, and 1 high-profile entertainment attorney. Dwayne's face didn't change, he simply closed his eyes. Outside the courthouse, cheers erupted. Protesters, fans, and advocates gathered, holding signs, "Protect the truth," "No more silence," and "We stand with Dwayne." In the days that followed, Kevin Hart's sponsors terminated their contracts. Streaming platforms paused his upcoming releases. A federal task force was established to investigate abuse of power in the entertainment industry. As for Dwayne Johnson, he disappeared from public view for several weeks. No social media, no statements. Then, one day, a video appeared. Dwayne sitting in a quiet garden, wearing a plain white t-shirt, looking directly into the camera. "I didn't win," he said, "but I didn't lose either. I got my voice back, and I'm going to use it for others now." The screen faded to black, and with it, Hollywood's silence cracked. This was no longer just a trial, it was a reckoning. In the weeks that followed, Dwayne announced the creation of a new foundation, Echoes of Truth, a non-profit dedicated to protecting whistleblowers and supporting victims of high-profile manipulation. Former assistants, industry staffers, and even a few celebrities came forward, empowered by the case. Investigations expanded to other entertainment circles, music, fashion, even sports agencies. The ripple had become a wave, and though the fight was far from over, one thing had become clear. Dwayne Johnson had done what no one else dared. He stood up,